Missouri.
Long and green near to home. The TYFF River, also as known as the Green River, is a part of our identity. The river being a part of our community, it's something we see nearly every day. The TYFF River, located in the greater Seattle area in King County, Washington, stretches 12 miles long and ending at its mouth in Elliott Bay. Before all the fancy treatment systems and all the pipes underground, colonization hit the Seattle area. Seattle became the stomping ground for settlers during the 1880s and the 1890s. During this period, people decided to settle and build their homes in the Seattle area. With more people making Seattle as their new home, the amount of waste was bound to increase. People back then saw the river as a viable solution to their waste. Back then, it was believed that the water would flow and filter itself out. However, say that an individual is to dispose of their waste into the river 10 times a day, that number would change to hundreds and eventually thousands. Furthermore, up until the 1940s, people of the community weren't the only ones dumping waste into the river. World War II had occurred, and a war factory of companies moved along the TYFF River. They started manufacturing B-17 bombs and finished off making their fighter jets. The production of military craft resulted in the creation of various toxic chemicals and pollutants that made its way into the TYFF River. Imagine not knowing what to do with your own waste. Where would it go? You resort to dumping it into the river, but you need the water from the river for your own survival. By dumping waste into the river, the water becomes contaminated. Suddenly, people become ill and debilitated. Our main source of food became our own undoing. We become poisoned from the inside. Pollution in the TYFF River is caused by the lack of awareness from the people, causing stormwater runoff from the pollutants of vehicles, fertilizers, and pesticides. The most commonly known pollutants that leak into the river from stormwater runoff includes PCBs, excessive amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and many more. All these chemicals affect the life expectancy of plants in and near the river. According to National Geographic, over the span of 6 years, in the 1980s, the salmon population dropped drastically.
PCBs are very resistant. They don't really necessarily, they don't react with a lot of other chemicals, so they can bind really well to the sediments at the bottom of the river, and that's where fish look for food. And so when they're feeding on the bottom of the river, they're also ingesting PCBs. And PCBs have bad human health consequences.
This affects the health of the water not only in the TYFF River, but also the vast portion of the communities along the river. From Tukwila to South Park, there are many neighborhoods south of Seattle that rely on the river as their primary source of food. Even Washington State Department of Health considered river crabs, shellfish, and other bottom feeders as unsafe for consumption. Water pollution for far too long has been hidden under our radars. Our loved ones and our community will be victims to dangers of the toxic chemicals that lurk in the river. Bottom feeders will first feast on the sediments containing the pollution. Then bigger fishes will feed on the bottom feeders. Eventually, people will consume the fish. Over a century, industrial companies were not ready for the uncontrolled and unprepared growth of pollution. With time and research passing by, many organizations joined the battle against water pollution. While these entities were dealing with larger issues of water pollution, the people and communities can deal with the smaller issues. In this fight for a clean TYFF River, everyone must take up action. This map shows where our rainwater goes. Focusing in more on this area, all the rain that falls into the cities that are marked in blue run off into the TYFF River.
So I think there's a lot that we can all do to help decrease the pollutants going into the TYFF, and some of that are very simple behaviors we can all change. So the issue is that A lot of times the rainwater, when it passes over roads and parking lots, goes into a storm drain and then directly goes into the Duwamish River along with others in this region. So there's things we can change to decrease the amount of chemicals and pollutants that we produce ourselves. So
when it gets to the ground, it travels to the nearest stormwater drain, carrying along litter, vehicle leakage, fertilizers containing traces of nitrogen and phosphorus, and harmful chemicals from soap from when you washed your car at home. With stormwater drains practically being everywhere, every single thing on the roads and ground will eventually end up in the Duwamish River, as for they are directly connected to the river.
We are accountable for the river's unhealthy condition. Through our actions, most of us are unaware of the choices we make that indirectly hurts the river. According to the data taken from our community, 33% of the people in our community washes their car at home, 18.1% fixes their car at their houses, 27.6% of the people uses fertilizer, and 9.7% of the people uses pesticide. These numbers shows evidence that our community are contributing to the issue. As mentioned before, these are the issue of actions that contributes to the toxic chemicals flowing down into our stormwater pipe system. Overall, pollution in the Duwamish is damaging the health of the communities near the rivers. People's unawareness and defiance to change their harmful habits contributed to the problem. Vehicle leakage at home car washes, fertilizer, and pesticides bring an abundance of toxic chemicals. The harmful residue gets flowed into the river through storm drains. The fishes in the river are directly affected by the pollution because the pollutant settles into the river's floor, mixing into the fish's food. The lower income communities and neighborhoods along the river uses the river as their main food source. The community unknowingly became the problem, but at the same time is the solution as well. Being educated and mindful of choices made, we can all see a cleaner river in our future. We can reverse our actions. Our choices isn't permanent. We can start by going to an auto repair shop to maintain your vehicle. It will keep your vehicles in its best condition to avoid any leakage. Going to a car wash such as Brown Bear Car Wash that reuses and treats their water before putting it back into the sewer system.
Everything adds up. People sometimes think, well, I don't need to recycle this can because what difference could I make recycling one can? But if everybody thought that way, obviously nothing would get recycled. Yeah. People think about maintaining their yard or their landscaping and choosing what type of fertilizer to use or pesticides to use. And they think, oh, it's just my little yard in West Seattle, what difference could it make? But if everybody thought that way, obviously we would be using products that weren't the best for the environment. So making good decisions about being a good steward, and they're simple decisions. It's like choosing one fertilizer over another, choosing to not use a pesticide, use some natural mean instead. Generally these days, that stuff costs the same. It just requires you to put a little more thought into your decision making.
With all that have been said, making good choices on what product we use will bring us closer to a cleaner river. From something simple like choosing a specific fertilizer over another or having your car washed at a facility that reuses water, the Duwamish River comes closer to a healthy river. One person isn't enough to fulfill such a huge task, but with everyone's contribution, we can expect a clean river along with a healthy community.
The Duwamish River is important to us.
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 So the Duwamish River is very important to the Port of Seattle and the citizens of King County and City of Seattle.
The Duwamish River is important to us.
anniversary.